Hello and welcome again to the Certainteed Right Way to Insulate training workshop. Today, we'll show you how to insulate a home with the blow-in blanket system, BIBS for short, using OPTIMA.
First of all, before you view this video, it is essential that you study the Right Way video on blowing attics so you understand the blowing machines and the safety information. And also be sure you're familiar with the Right Way video Getting Started. Both videos are basic training you'll need before you learn the system. Okay, ready for BIBS? BIBS can be installed in several ways. This video is on BIBS using OPTIMA fiberglass blowing insulation blown behind OPTIMA fabric, which you staple or glue to the studs. This creates a uniformly dense, firm insulation, a blanket of insulation that takes the shape of any cavity it fills. This uniform coverage means that BIBS offers exceptional sound insulation too. In fact, BIBS is considered the most effective standard insulating method available. It won't settle. Spaces are filled uniformly to a high R value, and the chances of gaps being left are less than with bats. OPTIMA insulation does not require adhesive. It's blown dry, straight from the package. You'll need to allow more time to properly install a BIBS job compared to using bats, and there are some new skills to learn. If you're experienced in blowing insulation, you're halfway there. It's important to wear the proper protective clothing: hard-soled sturdy shoes, long pants, gloves, a long-sleeved shirt, a cap, a disposable dust respirator, and protective eyewear with side shields. Be sure you have sufficient OPTIMA fabric and OPTIMA insulation on the truck for the day's work. You don't want to waste time going back for more before the job is finished. You'll also need unfaced bats for blockers and for insulating small spaces where the hose won't fit. Scraps from another job are fine. Don't forget a utility knife. You'll use it for cutting OPTIMA fabric. Okay, let's begin the job. A good first step is to look for eaves that go to soffits. Install baffles, and then go around and put in blockers of unfaced insulation. You don't want to blow OPTIMA behind the baffles and block the airflow. As we said, scraps from another job will do fine. Go around an entire room or two and cover the areas to be insulated with OPTIMA fabric. There are two methods: gluing and stapling. If your supervisor prefers stapling, first staple across the top plate using a bat hammer or a compressed air stapler. Staple closely, about every 1.5 to 2 inches or less. Keep the fabric pulled tight. Run the fabric across the studs, pulling it tight and stapling as you go. Be sure to staple in the corners. Staple all around the perimeter of windows. And finally, staple across the bottom plate. Use these dotted lines as a guide for hanging the fabric straight from top to bottom. To glue, use drywall adhesive. First, staple the fabric across the top plate about every 2 feet. Keep the fabric pulled tight. Then apply the adhesive to the studs. This is the way to apply fabric to metal studs. Then, keeping the fabric tight, use a smoothing tool and bond the netting to the studs. Finally, glue the bottom plate.
No matter which method you use, it's very important to end up with fabric that's tight across the stud cavities. If you leave any slack, the insulation will bulge out too far beyond the face of the studs. Now, if this happens, the drywallers won't be able to lay their drywall flush against the studs, and that's a problem. You don't want to come back and do the job over.
The next step is to cut holes in the fabric to fit the hose end. Generally, if you're using a short hose, you'll have to cut 2 holes per cavity, except for short walls where you can cut 1 hole. If you're using a longer hose, 1 hole per cavity is sufficient. You'll usually use a 3-inch or 4-inch diameter hose. cut the hole just about the diameter of the end of the hose. Most people find that one of these cuts works best for them. A 45-degree angle cut, an L or J cut, a T cut, or an X cut. Now you're ready to blow. In a normal-sized sidewall, insert the hose downward approximately 2 to 3 feet. The most effective way is to continuously move the hose back and forth until the cavity is completely filled, as you see here. Fill the bottom of the cavity, keeping the hose moving to fill the space completely and evenly. Then, turn the hose and fill the area above. Usually, one hole is enough in a cavity. However, if you're blowing 9 or 10-foot sidewalls, you'll probably need a second hole near the top. You'll probably need a ladder or stilts for this higher work, so to save time, do all the upper holes after you've finished the lower holes. It will take a little practice to handle the controls. You should work with your supervisor or an installer who's experienced with the equipment to learn how to operate the controls. Each manufacturer of blowing machines has recommended machine settings. Your supervisor can show you the correct machine settings, or you can refer to the OPTIMA instruction manual for proper air pressure settings, gate opening, and gear settings. Experience will tell you the best blowing speed, but a good starting point is to run the engine at about 2,500 RPM. Increase the air slightly and close the air valve. Bib's blowing speed is less than that for an attic open blow. Reading across this chart, you'll find insulation thickness, the R value you'll blow, pounds per cubic foot you should be blowing to achieve the correct R value, and coverage per bag. This chart is on the OPTIMA bag. It's a good idea to get a bag and study it. As you begin, your supervisor should work with you to help you judge how well you're achieving the correct R value. A slight bulge of approximately 1/2 inch should be your goal. A bulge of this size will not interfere with the drywaller's work. Now, how can you tell whether you're blowing the right density? Well, here's one way to check your work. This cookie cutter method is endorsed by BIBCA, the Blow-In Blanket Contractors Association. After you blow an area, remove some fabric so you can insert a cutter like this. Incidentally, the cutter is available from BIBCA, or you can make one yourself. It should be 6 inches in diameter and 6 inches deep. Insert the cutter completely in the cavity and remove the plug of insulation. Now, using a postage scale, weigh the plug. If the weight of the plug is in the range on this chart, you've insulated correctly. If not, adjust your blowing and check your work again. Ideally, you should check several spots in each room to see how consistent your work is. For more information, check with BIBCA. As you gain experience, you'll learn the feel of a correctly filled cavity, and you'll be able to judge your work by firmness of the insulation. A good installer constantly tests the density by pushing gently against the material. The cavity must be completely filled and firm to the touch from floor to ceiling. Remember, you can always go back and add fill to any area you haven't filled completely. Pay attention to filling corners completely. And be sure to fill completely around obstacles such as pipes and boxes and ducts.
In cold climates, to help prevent pipes and exterior walls from freezing, install the fabric like this, behind the pipes, so the insulation is between the pipes and the exterior wall.
In narrow spaces, crimp the end of the hose and fill. And don't forget to chink around windows and doors with unfaced insulation. Many of today's homes may have a lot of wiring in the cavities. You have intercoms, alarm systems, stereos, and with bibs, whether you have one wire or a dozen, you can insulate effectively with no extra effort. You don't have to cut like with bad installations. The result is a uniformly insulated space with no gaps. Virtually every part of a house can be insulated with Optima. Here's a cathedral ceiling. And others. To insulate a ceiling under flooring, simply cover the joists and blow. Insulate band joists. It's easy to add sound control to a wall. Simply use fabric on both sides and blow. Insulate around shower stalls. And under bathtubs. Be sure to insulate behind electrical boxes. The last step before cleanup is to use a very soft bristle push broom to level off the work. Some installers prefer using a length of hose. Go floor to ceiling and press gently against the fabric. This is also part of your inspection. If you notice any spots that are not completely filled, reinsert your hose and add Optima using a low blow speed. If you've overfilled, remove the excess material so the drywallers will have a nearly level surface. Experience will help you do a perfect job, but even the most experienced installers have to check their work. To help you remember what you've learned in this video, CertainTeed has prepared this Optima installation guide.
Installing an Optima job correctly takes some on-the-job practice and experience. In this video, we've tried to give you the basics. As you've seen, Optima is great for insulating every space in a home completely. Good luck. We'll see you next time.